Aliens really do be abducting people in the craziest ways. Hello, I'm Andrew Boyd, and today I will be distracting myself from the horror of my own abduction to this dark liminal void dimension by telling you about the top 5 real people who claim to have been abducted by aliens. Number 5. A Christmas abduction. Our first tale comes from a woman who claims that one Christmas day she did not receive her 2 front teeth or a hippopotamus, but was instead abducted by beings from another world. This is her story. I saw a UFO in 1978 on Christmas Day. My mom and dad saw it also. I was so excited as a 12-year-old child that I went to sleep on the top bunk bed and dreamed that I was being lifted up on a craft. My body couldn't move as I was being lifted in a force field. Upon entering the craft, I could feel my body begin to move again. I was covering my eyes and I felt 2 taps on my shoulder. I turned around and it was 3 of them. One was female. She said, "Don't be afraid. We are not going to harm you. We only chose you because we knew you were more curious than afraid." They showed me all around the craft. The floors were made of cushions. They explained that they fly with their mind and manually. I asked if I could fly it. They said that I wouldn't comprehend their technology. I said I could learn. They replied that I would have to erase everything that I learned on Earth first. Then I would have to learn their history and technology. They taught me how to communicate with them with my mind, and how to fast forward psychically. For example, one day we will be communicating with other worlds to help us live longer, and they would teach us how to build a craft that will take us to other planets. It is really too much to write, but just sharing my special dream. I asked them if I will remember this. They said, when I grow up 40 or 50 years later, I will remember this as if it happened yesterday. Every feeling and emotion. She said it's a technology of theirs that's called reverse memory. I never told anyone this story other than my family. I figure I'll share it here. Number 4. The Sacramento Abduction. This next story is from an anonymous Reddit user who claimed to be abducted and experimented on by aliens before waking up at home with injuries related to the experiment. As he told the story, in July of 2015, back when I was 19, I lived in a house in Southport, Sacramento, with 3 other friends. I woke up one night to a light coming through the ceiling of my room, and it lifted me out of my bed. Next thing I know, I'm in some kind of chair and unable to control my body like I had been given something. There were guys that were not human men, but gray people with large black almond-shaped eyes doing stuff with what seemed like medical instruments and machines. I was very terrified. I was unarmed, naked, and unable to move. I was so scared. One of them was touching the machine that put a tube down my throat and into my stomach. His hand got close to my face because he had to adjust something holding my head in place. I remember getting a good look at his hand and eyes. They had long fingers with pads at the tips, sort of like salamanders do. Their skin is gray, but kind of like a powdery translucent gray. They had large heads with small necks. So small and thin, it didn't make sense. Their arms and fingers were long and skinny too. I was in a chair with my head and jaw held by something, so I didn't see their feet. I'd say the tallest probably stood about the height of my lowest rib, and for reference, I'm 5'10". The tube machine sucked out the food I ate earlier that day, and then was pulled out of me. I don't remember how I got there. But then I remembered being in a cage made of some kind of metal that reminded me of aluminum in a room with curved walls. In front of me was a man who looked a lot like a human, talking to a gray person on a window that lit up as a screen, like a hologram, but not like the Star Wars kind, more like a video call. The man was tall and looked like a human, except that his skin was very white and his hair was blonde and platinum. I've never seen a person that kind of snow-white skin color before. He spoke with a gray person on the holoscreen in a language I didn't understand. He wore a blue flight uniform of some kind. The man was obviously military of some sort, judging by his uniform. The gray person spoke in a language that sounded like birds chirping. Once the call was over, the holoscreen turned into a different display with symbols, and the man turned and walked to me. He crouched down and spoke to me in plain American English and said to me, "Everything's gonna be fine. I'm going to get you out of here and take you home." I was so happy to hear that. He opened the cage, and the next thing I knew, I fell on top of my bed, with my back hitting the mattress first. I immediately got out of bed right after I fell. Number 3. Too close encounters, too furious. Next, we have a story from a woman who claims that she was visited by aliens as a child, but not believed. Years later, she had a second encounter that solidified the experience as truth in her mind. As she tells it, "My first experience happened when I was a child, living in a small town in Texas, in a house on a few acres of land for horses and cattle. I wasn't allowed to watch very much television, so I'd never heard of nor seen anything about UFOs or aliens before in my life. Until one night I found myself out in the field standing in front of a spaceship. And there was a being in front of me. Behind it stood the open hatch of a light-filled door. I do not remember how I got there or back inside. I have also forgotten what, if anything, was said or done to me at the time. When I spoke about it, I was reprimanded harshly and told I had an overactive imagination and it was only a dream. When I insisted on repeating my story, I was punished. They demanded to know where I'd seen such a thing, and the little television I was allowed to watch became much smaller, to the point where mentioning what had happened only brought negative consequences. So I stopped talking about it. Despite this, it remains forever in my memory. One night in early 2004, I was home alone at my apartment in Houston, Texas. As usual, I fell asleep on the couch in front of the television. Shortly after drifting off, I awoke in my living room. However, I was now upright, gliding seamlessly across the floor. I looked down, realizing that I was not walking, but instead floating towards my bathroom. Upon this realization, I also recognized that I was not asleep, and was consciously thinking to myself, I am floating. A series of emotions ran through me: confusion, fear, as well as excitement as to what was happening to me. But these feelings were tempered, and although I didn't understand why, I felt helpless to do anything to stop it. The bathroom was cold and dark, visibility possible due to the dim light coming from the plug-in by the sink. Although I have no memory of putting the toilet seat down, I found myself sitting on it, confused. I thought to myself, what am I doing here? As I looked up there in front of me, what was commonly known as a gray. It was standing, slightly taller than me, as I sat, staring at me stoically with its huge, unblinking eyes. Startled, my regretful reaction was to raise my hand up as if to hit it. My arm was instantly and simultaneously stopped and lowered in a series of short jerks. I immediately thought, it is controlling my body, and shortly thereafter realized that although I should have felt more afraid, I wasn't. I then thought to myself, it has subdued my emotions as well. I felt a little giddy about what was happening. I did not verbally speak, nor did it, but I remember thinking it knew exactly what I was thinking and proceeded with its agenda with astute purpose. I recall getting into the bathtub for some reason, but my memory after that is vague and muddled. I presume this is when it performed whatever experiment or procedure it came to do. When I awoke, I instantly felt a rush of fear and excitement, and also, oddly, a bit sad as well. My memories were indeed confirmed, by the way. I'm a notoriously bad sleeper, and because of a painful back injury, and I never sleep prone. I had a real sense of missing time and being a bit groggy. When I went to the bathroom, everything seemed in place, outside of the fact that the shower curtain was not only pulled back completely, but wet as well. Left only with this most vivid memory that I wanted to share, but found often that when I did, it only brought odd silence and strange looks. Assurances that it was only a dream. But it was not a dream. Number 2, aliens or sleep paralysis. Next, we have a story of a woman who woke up one night only to begin levitating as aliens attempted to take her away. As she tells it, I had woken up in my bed feeling completely normal, and I wasn't able to move. After I had felt that initial panic, I began to try and move, and it was possible. It was just very difficult. I remember being able to get my knees up to my chest and roll over onto my side and get my feet onto the ground, and I remember being able to feel like the cold floorboards underneath my feet. After that happened, I remember seeing a bright light coming through my window. Everything began to buzz and vibrate, and I could see my bedroom door swing open, and 3 tall black silhouettes kind of floated into my room. I had seen them looking at me from beside my bed. They looked very angry. After that, my jaw had stretched open. Everything was still buzzing and vibrating, and I began to get lifted up towards my ceiling. After that, I remember fighting it really, really hard, because the first thing that came to my mind obviously was, I'm getting abducted by aliens. Like, it was the only thing that made sense to me at that moment. And after I'd gotten lifted up towards my ceiling, I remember my nose touching my ceiling. I got snapped back into bed, and that's where I woke up, feeling extremely nauseous. I ran to my bathroom, throwing up. I had bruises all over my legs and thighs. Number 1. Yet another abduction. For our final entry, we have a video from 2010. The story behind it is that a woman claimed to her husband that aliens were trying to abduct her. Her husband set up a camera, paranormal activity style, to put her mind at ease, and captured this bizarre footage. In the video, the husband is on the left and the wife on the right, sleeping under a duvet. The duvet on the wife's side is lifted up but then falls flat on the bed, giving the appearance that she has vanished. After 12.5 minutes time, the duvet again lifts up very high, and when it settles, the mother is once again visible. They were not able to extract the footage from the infrared camera, so they played the footage on a monitor which they filmed. Does this footage really show a woman being taken by aliens, or is there some other simpler explanation? With that, another journey together is complete. The dark forces that run this evil dimension have asked that I remind you to like, comment, and subscribe, lest they be forced to transport you here, where you will be forced to host videos while listening to generic looped spooky music, here on Top 5 Scary Videos.